And hello again, my dear viewers. It's the end of the 2nd of March on the calendar. My last video review will not be devoted to military operations. For tonight, at 2200 hours, I have not collected enough information yet. Because while in the south it is unclear where the Russian column went. She went somewhere, but it's not clear where she went yet. Also, the situation in Kharkiv is still unclear. I can't convey anything new, so let's focus all the information either on tomorrow's first issue or in the second. And now I want to talk about equally important problems, about how the territories should live after Russian troops entered them. Today, a certain Lesha Orestrovich, who was sitting and broadcasting something from Kiev, explained how all residents of Ukraine should throw themselves at Russian tanks, Russian armored vehicles, almost tied up with Molotov cocktails. Let him watch a video about what happened to such idiots who tried to do it in Kherson. Of course, it's easy for him to chatter in the president's office while sitting in the dungeon. He would have tried to join the partisans himself. This is another example of the fact that the Kiev regime absolutely does not care what happens to ordinary people. It is for this reason that representatives of this regime quite calmly put heavy equipment inside cities, near residential buildings. Accordingly, retaliatory strikes are received and peaceful people are killed. They don't care about anything. They show with their whole appearance that they don't care about it. And people need to live somehow. Today I want to give some examples of how different cities come out of this situation in different ways. The first example is in my native region, the city of Konotop, where a delegation of the Russian command arrived this morning to negotiate how they will continue to live. How will the Ukrainian armed forces, the Russian armed forces, as well as the city, and ordinary community live on the same territory? And, you know, nothing terrible happened. No battles, no bloodshed, on the contrary. They sat down and agreed. For example, they agreed that Russian checkpoints and checkpoints of the Ukrainian armed forces remain in their positions, make sure that there are no problems, there are no provocations. Meanwhile, the municipal services of the city are starting to work and bring life in the city back to normal. Yes, restrictions on the movement of freight transport are being introduced, but public transport is working, cars are passing, of course, after inspection. The city is beginning to return to peaceful life. Moreover, pay attention, there are Ukrainian troops inside the city, there are Russian troops outside and people live. What is the problem? There are no problems. As we know, Aktirka chose an alternative path. There, local madmen not only fixed at civilians in order to increase the degree of confrontation, but also the local military decided not to give up, but to fight to the end. Moreover, they fully carried out Mr. Arestovich's plan, they tried to attack Russian rear vehicles. Earlier, the Russian troops calmly passed Aktirka, and only then, after several rear vehicles were attacked by local madmen, the Russian military returned and demolished the military's unit literally to the ground, crumbled it into a fine vinaigrette. Moreover, the reinforced concrete structures of the barracks could not stand and buried, according to my data, up to 70 Ukrainian military. This is an alternative, second way to solve the problem of two cities in one region. It seems to me the first way is more sensible. And there is a third way, which today, for example, was chosen by Kherson, whose mayor announced tonight that he had concluded an agreement. Or rather, he put it all very nicely, it's not an agreement, it's not a contract, it's just interaction. God be with him, call it what you want, the main thing is that the city lives. The authorities of the city, on the territory of which there are now no Ukrainian armed forces, have concluded some agreements with the Russian armed forces on the rules of conduct on the territory of the city. Moreover, please note, no one encroaches on Ukrainian symbols, absolutely no one reacts to Ukrainian flags, they can hang quite calmly. No one is going to seize anything. And the city can live quite peacefully. Yes, in curfew mode, because there are also insane people in the city. Yes, there are some restrictions on the movement of citizens, but, as they say, wartime. Nothing can be done. But the city can live peacefully, bread will be baked in it, shops will start working. I think it is in the common interests of the residents of the city and the Russian troops that there are no looters and other shusher in the city, with weapons that came from nowhere. This is another normal example of how a city lives. And here's another example for you. I already brought him yesterday and today in the Telegram channel. This is Vasilkov near Kiev. It is completely under the control of Ukraine. Are you aware that the previous night the city of Vasilkov was repulsed by another Russian landing? The previous landing, as we were told, landed from the IL-76, then the airborne troops tried to capture the airfield. One IL-76 plane was shot down, but they could not find it anywhere afterwards. At first they talked about 3 downed, but then they agreed that the plane, after all, was 1. But despite the fact that there are no large lakes or large rivers nearby, the remains of this aircraft were not found. But among what was found are about 20 corpses of local, so-called self-defense workers who did not recognize their own Ukrainian military in the dark. Shooting started and about 20 people were killed. An absolutely similar case occurred last night, when, as far as I understand, the local territorial defense, after drinking a large amount of alcohol, unleashed a dispute. As a result, one part shot the other, then those who shot the first were destroyed by the third. As a result, 17 corpses of fighters of territorial defense. But in the information space, it looked as if some saboteurs had specifically infiltrated the territorial defense detachment in order to seize a kindergarten where 300 Ukrainian children were in the dungeon. It's not clear what they wanted to do with them there. So, they decided to carry out a terrorist attack and killed their comrades. At this time, the Russian troops of the Special Forces Alpha entered, who captured everyone. But the valiant territorial defense forces recaptured the kindergarten, destroying the invaders. However, not a single soldier of the Special Forces Alpha among these killed invaders was ever found. And if we discard all this garbage, which was invented only to hide another betrayal, it turns out that in the same city, for several days, the territorial defense shot more than 40 people, shooting at each other. Can you imagine what chaos Ukraine is plunging into today? And now compare with what, for example, will happen in Kherson and even with what will happen in Konotop. You, ordinary citizens of Ukraine, think about which of the 3 cities you would like to live in today. I'm not calling for anything. I'm just telling you what the situation looks like in 3 different parts of Ukraine, who live in 3 different circumstances. This is what I wanted to say in this article. That's all for now. Goodbye, until tomorrow. Wait for the new issue in the morning.